and welcome everyone. My name is Alison Hoons, and I'm a knowledge broker at Arthritis Research Canada and a member of Arthritis Research Canada's Volunteer Arthritis Patient Advisory Board. Before we begin today's session, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that Arthritis Research Canada's headquarters are located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. We express our deep gratitude to the keepers of the land. I'm thrilled to be the moderator for today's webinar, and I'm excited to learn from our occupational therapy scientist expert in identifying strategies people use to live well with arthritis, Dr. Catherine Backman, and with Chris Pudlak, who is our patient expert for this session. This webinar is part of episode 12 of the Arthritis Research Education Series titled Living Well, Arthritis and Self-Care, which features research that focuses on self-care strategies for people who are living with arthritis. And in the spirit of self-care, please feel welcome during this episode, whether you're joining us live or you're watching the recorded version, to make yourself comfortable. Find a position that you feel good in and maybe enjoy a warm cup of tea or coffee as you're joining us. If this is the first time that you're joining the Arthritis Research Education Series, it was created by our Arthritis Patient Advisory Board. And the purpose is to share examples of how research undertaken by the scientists here at Arthritis Research Canada impacts the lives of people who are living with arthritis. We invite you to stay to the end of the webinar and watch the video for this episode. It's outstanding. I really enjoyed it. And it's also available on our website. After the presentation by Dr. Backman, there will be a question and answer session with both Dr. Backman and with Chris Pudlak. So if you'd like to share any questions that you would like Dr. Backman or Chris to address, please click on the question and answer icon, which is on the lower right-hand side of your screen. There'll be no chat function for today's webinar. So to share your questions, use the Q&A rather than the chat function. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. Those that we can't get to, we'll try and address on the website later. And to ensure that we answer the questions that most people are interested in, you can actually use the upvote feature so that we know when you see a question and you think, oh yeah, I would also be interested in hearing the answer to that. You can click on the upvote feature. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Backman. Dr. Backman is a professor emerita in the Department of Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy at the University of British Columbia and a senior scientist at Arthritis Research Canada here in Vancouver, BC. The emeritus title is a fancy way of saying she's retired. So thank you for coming back from retirement to shepherd this webinar for us, Dr. Backman. She's an occupational therapist. She taught in the UBC Occupational Therapy Professional Program for many years and supervised rehabilitation sciences graduate student research. Catherine's research at Arthritis Research Canada focuses on the impact of chronic illness on participation in life activities, things such as parenting and employment, how that affects disruption in activities and the effect of rehabilitation interventions to deal with those impacts. A particular interest of Dr. Backman's was how people experience balance in their life roles and their occupations, and the very practical implications on getting on with life despite living with arthritis. So without further ado, over to Dr. Backman.
Thank you, Alison. Good morning. I'm very pleased to collaborate with the Arthritis Patients Advisory Board of Arthritis Research Canada for this episode of their Research Education Series. Today's topic is living well and with a focus on arthritis and self-care. I'm just going to take a second here to get the slides going, and it just takes a moment to share the screen. Okay, so hopefully everybody sees these slides. So this is just a repetition of the sincere acknowledgement we have for the caregivers of the land since time immemorial here. I am joining you from the same area of Vancouver that has been cared for by the Coast Salish peoples, including Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. I've also got a little disclosure or conflict of interest statement here that says I have nothing to disclose. This, in plain language, this just means I'm receiving no financial or other direct benefits from the content with which I've been discussing. And this is always a good little lesson to know whether or not people do have a conflict of interest when they offer educational sessions, because you could detect a little bit of bias every now and again in these things. So the purpose of today's talk is to identify self-care strategies to support people with arthritis to live their best life. We're going to talk about ways to engage in occupations of daily life while at the same time managing arthritis, managing a disease, and draw upon the science behind the advice offered by health professionals and people with lived experience of arthritis. So we're all learning from each other, researchers, health professionals, and people with arthritis together. So my perspective, or the knowledge and experience that I bring to this topic can be encapsulated in the old adage, all things in moderation, or moderation in all things. And I draw upon this as a research concept that's called occupational balance. We all have things that we need and want to do to take care of ourselves and others, to contribute to society, to participate in occupations that give meaning and joy to our lives. We need to make choices and decisions and plans, and sometimes there's competing demands on us and time is finite. And in my research and scholarly work, this all relates to this notion of occupational balance. What are all the occupations of daily life, and how do we juggle them when there's competing demands, but more, how do we develop the habits and routines that help us live a balanced life? It builds on individual experiences, and we'll hear one example of individual experiences when we hear from Chris during the question and answer, or if you watch the short video that's at the end of this webinar. His story is unique to him, yet there's elements that are familiar to other people. We all have some things in common, but we all have things that are unique to our own lives. I draw on qualitative and narrative evidence, or more simply stories that people tell, to think about the context of daily life. How do people engage in what's important and meaningful to them? How do they fulfill what they expect of themselves or what's expected of them? And recognizing that they do these across an entire lifespan where the resources, supports, and demands are regularly, if not constantly, changing. So all these things that we do in a day, we call occupations. Thinking about choosing, changing, adapting occupations to live well with arthritis involves an awareness of the environment in which we do it, and the what kind of skills you need, or what kind of demands the different things you do place on the individuals who are doing them. And all these things shape how we engage in the activities of daily life, what we do and don't do. So occupational balance is defined as on the screen here as the subjective experience of having the right amount and right variation among the occupations that are in our life. This could include paid work, parenting, volunteering, household work, leisure, physical activity, other things that are either obligatory or discretionary occupations, things we choose or things we're expected to do, and rest and sleep. This particular definition has evolved over many years of research and is quoted from papers from our colleagues in Sweden in particular, where a number of researchers in Scandinavia have looked at the way that we balance our day-to-day activities in order to live a healthy life. And they've studied this with many different groups of people, not just people with arthritis, but also the general population and different people with different illnesses or health conditions. This idea of a balance among work, leisure, rest, and sleep has been embedded in occupational therapy practice since the formal beginnings of the profession as something that's critical to maintaining health and well-being. It started first as a philosophical belief by the founders of the profession. Then theories were developed based on people's practice or clinical experiences, and subsequently research, when it was first conducted, started to identify some of the factors that influence occupational balance and looking at the association between occupational balance and life satisfaction and health outcomes. So occupational balance is very strongly associated with positive health outcomes, or a lack of balance or occupational imbalance is very strongly associated with chronic conditions that have a lifestyle component to them. So things like heart disease. Self-care is what we do to help maintain or restore a healthy occupational balance. And so that's why we're going to talk about self-care today. So why self-care? Well, in the context of living with arthritis, which is a long-term or chronic health condition, or a chronic disease, research shows the potential impact of different types of arthritis is disruption to our activities or occupations, and can contribute to a sense of occupational imbalance. It can really disrupt our lives, throw things off kilter, interrupt or stop us from doing the things that are important to us. This impact can be quite unpredictable and quite variable within individuals and across individuals. So self-care strategies help to minimize this disruption. So here's some examples from the research. So from one of our studies, these are 4 findings related to women's experiences living with early rheumatoid arthritis, or RA. Research is full of healthy lifestyle recommendations to inform decisions about how to go about our days and weeks. For example, eat more fruits and veggies every day, move more, meditate often. In real life, however, these good intentions can be overruled or set aside for lots of different reasons. So when we worked with this group of 37 women who gave us very long and detailed descriptions of what life with the early rheumatoid arthritis was like. When we looked at the findings, looked at their stories and tried to make sense of the findings to across all of these different experiences, the 4 main themes, or the 4 main ideas that came out from that study were dealing with uncertainties, describing how activities were disrupted, how they had to do things differently, both positive. Sometimes they discovered new and better ways of doing things, but also doing things differently in ways that were less satisfying, but they felt they had no choice because of the demands of their situation or the status of their arthritis. And as they were adapting or changing or adjusting to these activity disruptions and all these uncertainties, they were experiencing changing views of self. So they were experiencing, like all of us do, good days, bad days, and worse days. And the worst days hopefully were infrequent, but they really had a profound effect on how they viewed themselves. Doing things differently might be doing household chores differently to accommodate arthritis pain, for example, or they might need to change what they do so they no longer did really physically demanding leisure activities or playing with their children, and instead kind of redelegated household responsibilities. So somebody who was more physically able in that household did the active activities. And so they kind of juggled what the different responsibilities were. So some people need to change what they do, some change how they do. And all of these changes and the fact that it wasn't the same all of the time resulted in some changing views of self, or kind of the way they viewed them. The way they viewed themselves and their responsibilities in life. And so these are just two quotes from that study as some examples of what disruptions felt like, and kind of the profound impact that it could have on individuals. I have to find other things I like to replace the things that are fulfilling to me. I'm very often excluded by the mere fact that I can no more lift a bowling ball than fly to the moon. Second example, you have to face the fact you're not going back to that job, period. A year and a half later, I'm still going, how do I define myself? And that's been really hard. You're a lot more than your job description, but there's a huge part of you that is the job. So people need to make these adjustments, and things, they take time, and you need to find your way in this world of uncertainty. And there's different ways of doing that. The power of habits and routines, so that you do things more easily, readily, and automatically, can help sustain health and help restore or bolster a sense of self that's very positive and meaningful for people. So while that study looked at women, men with arthritis share some of the similar experiences. They're not confined to women, although men and women will describe things differently and do in fact have a different impact, but there's still some commonalities across them. So these sample quotes come from a study in the United Kingdom of men with inflammatory types of arthritis. I want to do it. The mind is willing and wanting to do it, but it's the body that's not allowing me to do it. So they were describing how they needed, how their arthritis was causing them to give up some things, whether temporarily or more longer term. Sometimes the wife had to put me socks on. Like I said, I wouldn't wish it, meaning arthritis, on nobody. Or as a cricket captain, you have to be able to play cricket, don't you? So I had to give that up. So these are also talking about the elements of identity that could be affected by arthritis. So medical intervention or medical treatment sometimes uses the phrase treat to target when talking about inflammatory types of arthritis, where the target is getting good control of the arthritis with medications, or really controlling those symptoms like pain and fatigue, and getting as close to a remission as possible, where there's just very low rumblings or hardly noticing the symptoms that come along with arthritis. If you can get some really good medical management, that's the target, as close to remission as possible. Whether medications help people achieve remission or not, people are more than their disease and more than their body parts, and they really want to be able to do what matters to them, which is why it's important that we do these studies on occupational disruption and occupational balance. They're important areas of research. So we want to be able to tell health policymakers, funding sources, what the impact of arthritis really is. But we also want to help people who are living with the effects of arthritis to navigate this really uncertain world. Occupational disruption has been known as an experience of arthritis and other chronic diseases for a very long time, for decades, both before the modern medications, the biologics and biosimilars became available, but also since then. And people are really understanding occupational disruption in the world today because it affected virtually everybody during the pandemic. That things were such a big scale, disrupting environments, disrupting routines, changing what people could and couldn't do, imposing things upon them, that virtually everybody has some sympathy, if not firsthand experience, about what occupational disruption is really like. These experiences need to influence the way we collaborate with people or collaborate with patients when sharing tips or strategies for self-care and how to live well with arthritis. Some people do this by monitoring and really keeping track of how they feel when they do different things, or as they develop new habits, try and track the effects of those. But not everyone finds joy in wearing a Fitbit and sharing their physical activity data with a physical therapist or their physician, but many people do. But health professionals just need a variety of strategies for collaborating and working with people. And the self-care strategies kind of come all under this umbrella of making choices and planning ahead. So we want to choose what are our priorities, what is it that we most need and want to do, and that's plan ahead for doing that. And by planning ahead, we can really minimize stress and make room for other things, important things in life. So all of these good days, bad days, worst days create strain and taxes the body. So the accumulation of all of our life experiences over years, social determinants of health, the resources that are available to us, privilege, illness and other health conditions, life demands, these all have a cumulative effect on the body. This is the stress or distress experience. Among people with arthritis, fatigue can be huge and absolutely overwhelming. In one of our earlier studies of mothers with inflammatory types of arthritis, there were really powerful descriptions of the experience of fatigue on the worst days. So on a good day or even a bad day, people have some strategies. They know how to kind of work around their fatigue because they've learned to plan ahead for it. But on worse days, it can be overwhelming. One woman described to us how she pushed the stop button on an elevator and lay down on the floor in exhaustion. She just had nothing left in the tank. So that's quite different than the fatigue that the general population would experience from time to time, where if they took a day off or slept in on the weekend, it would restore them. But it's finding that restorative balance can be quite challenging if fatigue is overwhelming. Just getting through the day is the goal in those instances, and sometimes trying to follow up on all those healthy habits or lifestyle recommendations that people gave you, counting your steps, getting in a good brisk walk, planning or preparing a super healthy meal. Sometimes you just have to cut yourself a break. And that's actually part of living a balanced lifestyle, recognizing that you can't be perfect. But if we cultivate over the long term habits and routines to support our health, then hopefully those worst days are at a minimum. And the power of habits and routines is that they become automatic, and we can participate in some of those things that really support. So the case for planning ahead. More than a third of our hours in a day, if we look at this little pie chart for 24 hours, more than a third of the day is dedicated to sleep. People who are employed full-time or close to full-time often have a good chunk of work. People with some types of caregiving responsibilities or other paid or unpaid work may have a good chunk to work. And then all these other little wedges are everything else. So ideally, in order to support all the everything else, we need to focus on sleep, and ideally an uninterrupted, good quality sleep, and sometimes a strategically placed nap every day, or a rest where it's known to be needed. Can be really important to help support all of these different activities that we want to get done in a day. All these things are parsed out. We want people to find a satisfactory balance of the right amount and right variation of meaningful, important, joyful, challenging, motivating kinds of occupations, some that occur every day, some that maybe occur just once in a while or on a weekly basis. And that means planning ahead. So there's a sample to-do list on how to be kind. One person's point of view of how to be kind to yourself after waking up. Make some coffee, do the best you can, stretch, move your body, drink some water, tell someone you love them, pay attention to what your favorite things are, get some sleep and be really proud of what you do. You really need to be kind to yourself as you develop your to-do lists or plan ahead. Here are some examples. This is a plug for Cheryl Crow, who is an occupational therapist who has rheumatoid arthritis herself and is a social media star. These samples are from her Arthritis Life website. The first pie chart is an example of how she devotes her energy, how she spends her energy. She thinks about what are all the healthy things I need to do to manage stress, how am I supporting nutrition, sleep, rest, and exercise, and how do I dole out that time. And she gives a couple of different examples from other people that she's worked with, and how while the pillars are in common across all people, the amount of time and energy that they devote to these things will vary. Planning is required in order to map out routines, and they're going to be different for everyone, but it needn't always measure time and count 24 hours, and that's what Cheryl's illustrating with these ones. Instead of thinking of the 24-hour day and have I mapped out an hour for exercise and so forth, it's how do I want to philosophically use up my mental energy and cognitive powers to deal with these different things? What's important to making me feel well? And then they choose the occupations that support each pillar and develop a routine that works for them to support each of those pillars. And don't forget that sleep, not just sleep and rest, but downtime during your waking hours can be really important so that there's time to recover physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental energy. So we'll talk a few minutes about sleep. It's a real cornerstone to preventing those worst days. It's widely known that sleep is that both quality and depth of sleep, a restorative sleep or restful sleep, so that quality of sleep, and the quantity, so how many hours, about 7 or 8 hours, typical for most adults, that both quality and quantity matter. Sleep plays with the immune system. A lack of sleep increases inflammation. Sleep helps to heal and repair tissues. This is when the body repairs itself. So the bones, joints, muscles are undergoing a repair process when you have a deep, restful sleep. And sleep also supports brain health. Lots of people with arthritis will talk a little bit about moments where they've got a bit of a brain fog, or they're feeling jet lag kind of. And so it can have an impact on cognitive performance or make people feel sluggish. sluggish if you've not had an adequate quality and quantity of sleep, or you sleep poorly for some reason. So a restorative sleep can be very important. And the ill effects of poor sleep are really compounded when you're living with a chronic disease like arthritis. So it becomes that much more important to develop habits and routines that really support a good quality sleep. These tips here that are on this slide are pretty standard, but with the help of rehabilitation practitioners, so occupational therapists, physical therapists, and others, can really help you personalize a routine to support good quality sleep and adequate duration of sleep. So you pay attention to the environment. So typically your bedroom where you're sleeping, you want to have a space that's cool and dark. And you want to have bedding that really supports your body. So you want to have a mattress that's good for you in the position that you sleep in, a pillow that supports your head and neck. And you want to feel good when you go to bed. So the best bed linens that you can afford, the sheets or comforters or bed, these all contribute to a relaxing and comfortable sleep. So people asking for gift suggestions for Christmas, tell them to get you a really nice set of bed linens or a new pillow that's going to support your head and neck. Think about the bedtime routine before you're going to bed. It's recommended no screen time for an hour before bedtime, because the light keeps your brain active, and you're trying to calm down. And the content of what you're reading or watching might also arouse the brain. So this is a time when you're trying to slow down and calm down. A warm bath can relax muscle and mind and help you cool the body so you can fall asleep faster. But if you're a person who has ice cold feet, then maybe you want to be putting a heat pad at the foot of the bed, and so that your cold feet aren't keeping you awake or keeping you tense, and you can relax and go to sleep. You can just kick it out of the way. And the daytime routine affects the quality of your sleep. If you want adequate physical activity, nutrition, mindful, joyful, creative activities during the day, so that your body is actually ready to rest and go to sleep at night. If you don't move your body during the day, it doesn't know that it needs a rest at night. So what you do during the day really will affect how well you can sleep at night. So we're kind of coming full circle to this whole idea of occupational balance and the definition of occupational balance that we started with: the right amount and right of a variety of occupations to balance your day. So it's your right. There's no one right way or one balanced lifestyle, and it's not necessarily meant to be a checklist thing where, yep, achieved that. It's going to fluctuate from day to day and across time and across the lifespan as your interests, ideas, and hopes and aspirations change. But you want to look for your right amount and your right variety. And this can require a flexible mindset to deal with the uncertainty that comes with living with arthritis. So you want to have a variety of things for downtime. Usually we don't have a problem finding things that are expected or obligatory for us to do. Those lists, those things are hanging over us. Usually where we need to be prepared a little bit in advance is, how are we going to spend our downtime? How are we going to fit in a little bit of mindfulness, fun, leisure occupations to balance those that are less fun or unfun or more obligatory in nature? And you want to spend some time to cultivate occupations or activities that really support rest and creativity. Things that can be done in minutes versus hours, so you can insert them throughout the day, the same way you might do little snacks of physical activity or do them in small bits. Children have a knack and have a real repertoire of things that they can do for 5, 10, or 15 minutes, but adults think of leisure sometimes in big chunks, like hours or a half day, that a golf game is half a day, or going for a hike or going skiing, so going off somewhere where they need to carve out several hours. But you want to look at what are some of the things that I can sit down and do just for 10 or 15 minutes and give myself just a small breather or a small break, or have a little burst of laughter over something that only takes a few minutes or half an hour, and not something that needs to be a full day affair. So here's a takeaway message from this session. These are this oldish essay. It's from 1989 by Robert Fulghum. Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten does in fact have some really important takeaway messages for living well. And from an occupational balance perspective, these three are really good ones. Live a balanced life, learn some, and think some, and draw and paint and sing and dance and play and work some every day. Take a nap every afternoon. Remember to give yourself some restorative breaks. And when you go out in the world, watch out for traffic, hold hands and stick together. So remember that there are people, places, and resources that can help you figure these things out and live with that uncertainty. So thank you very much for listening. Be good to yourself, and remember moderation in all things. Back to you, Allison.
Catherine, thank you so much. There was such great content there, so much I resonated with, the good, the bad, the worst, the giving up some things, the changing how we do some things, that idea of a to-do list. I often think of a to-do list as tasks that I need to do rather than a to-do list for self-care. So there were so many wonderful ideas there, even the self-care snacks that I don't have to think of, finding 2 hours, but even 5 minutes of self-care throughout the day. So thank you so much. We want to take the opportunity now to introduce you to Chris. So Chris, if you want to join us on screen, thank you so much. So Chris Pudlak is a member of Arthritis Research Canada's Patient Advisory Board, and he's here to share with us his experience and his insights in how to live well with the type of arthritis that's called ankylosing spondylitis. And for more detail, I really, I was watching the video that's on the website for this episode, and Chris goes into great detail that I found really helpful of ideas. So, Chris, before we move into the question and answer component, is there things that resonated with you from Catherine's presentation of your journey with living well and self-care?
Yeah, there were a couple points there. There was the one point about distress from seeking perfection, right, and pushing us too hard, and I kind of thought about perfecting my diet or perfecting my workouts or pushing myself at workouts, and that example with having a Fitbit and counting your steps might not be so fun, right? So I tried to think in the past of how I've tried to make those activities more fun, and they become easier, and they become more enjoyable and less stressful, right? Like instead of counting your steps, I go for a walk with the dog around the lake, and it's just so much more pleasant, right? And I think because stress is a big part of the inflammation too, I think. The thankfulness, being grateful, like having waking up in the morning and being happy that I have what movement I have, and seeing what I can do with it, and enjoying the day. Good quality sleep was a big factor for me. It's kind of it's a catch-22, a no-win situation when you have pain that's preventing you from sleep, and you're not getting enough sleep, and that's not helping you recover from the joint pain. So my strategy, I guess, was I just tried to focus with a lot of the things that Catherine did recommend, like getting enough activity during the day to help me sleep, and a lot of the strategies like a hot bath. I like a hot shower before bed, and it helps me sleep, and I like a cold one in the morning to relieve some of the stiffness and swelling and get me moving. So a lot of strategies like that, and hopefully, they slowly worked away and helped me get a little bit better sleep, and which also helped me recover. So yeah, a few of those items really resonated with me.
Thank you, Chris. And I see there's great engagement with questions in the Q&A box. And I think a few of them, to begin with, about 3 or 4 people have wondered, Catherine, whether the advice that you have shared with us this morning is focused only on rheumatoid arthritis, or is it applicable to other forms of arthritis?
So I think it's applicable to all types of arthritis, and in general, I think it's applicable to anyone, regardless of their health status. That we all have all these different demands in our lives, and we all need to take care of ourselves if we want to be healthy. And so I think all of the tips that we look at in self-care are important to maintaining our health. They just become more important if you add an illness or a health condition on top of it. So it's just like, you know how you didn't need recovery time after skiing all day when you were 19, but you did when you were 35. And then if you happen to be lucky enough to still ski at 45 or 50, you started to realize you needed how much more recovery time, or you needed to actually do the pre-ski exercises or, workouts or something in order to be good enough. It's the same sort of thing. We have these cumulative effects. So what happens with any type of arthritis is that it's putting some demands on your body. So all of these tips about the routines and habits to develop related to taking care of ourselves, they apply to all types of arthritis. And in fact, it can be a family affair. Even the non-arthritis people in your family would also benefit from spending a little bit of time on some of these self-care strategies.
Okay. And before we get into some of the detailed questions, there was also a question from Natalie. So just generally, I know there was great richness, and there will continue to be from this episode. And Natalie said it was hard to take notes and absorb everything that was presented. Don't worry, Natalie. A copy of the recording will be on the web page. And what I have done at times is stop and start that video a number of times so that I can listen several times and take notes for the part that are most relevant for me. Okay, so there are a couple very popular questions that have been upvoted a few times. So let's deal with those first and then on from there. The first question was, how do you develop this blueprint for self-care? And what kind of resources are available? So let's start with you, Chris. When you were first diagnosed, and this was a significant change in your life and how you had to leave your life. How did, Catherine spoke to the need to develop these new routines. How did you go about developing this blueprint and developing those routines?
Well, I'm not a healthcare professional, so I didn't really have a blueprint. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So really, like the 2 first resources, I guess, in developing a blueprint for myself were my rheumatologist and my physiotherapist. So, I was a pretty active guy before I was diagnosed. I was running and cycling, and but the physiotherapist taught me a lot, like with stretching, with core exercises, and especially since ankylosing spondylitis is really focused on the back. So she gave me a lot of advice on how to get moving again. My rheumatologist really helped me with my blueprint because I expressed her an interest of trying to get off medications, or at least trying to improve whatever lifestyle factors I could that would help. That would help alongside the medications. So she gave me a lot of advice on that. And unfortunately, in my case, like I was taking sulfasalazine, I was taking naproxen, and the naproxen was something I could dial back and see if my lifestyle changes were helping. And if I needed to, I could dial up the naproxen again. So she recommended starting with that. And then I did a lot of journaling, which was really for myself, just to document what I was trying, what was working, what wasn't working, and really it was kind of stress relief for myself to feel like I had a sense of control over what was going on with my body. And like a lot of people talk about elimination diet, but also elimination for activities too. Like I had to eliminate mountain biking. It was too hard on my joints, but I was able to transition into road cycling using aero bars, which allowed the weight to come off my wrists. I could barely float before I was diagnosed, but now I got into swimming, and I really love swimming, and it ended up being a great low impact activity. So trying these different things and journaling and seeing what works.
Thank you, Chris. That was a great description of a journey in developing that blueprint with help from others, but also with being very purposeful yourself, monitoring yourself and exploring and trying things yourself together with that guidance from your healthcare team. Catherine, did you want to add to that?
Sure. So for people who are just getting started, we can point you to a couple of resources. So at Arthritis Research Canada website, the Arthritis Patient Advisory Board developed a lifestyle guide. And so that lifestyle guide has some tips in it that people might find as a good starting point. Otherwise, what I'd say in terms of to add to Chris, you need to write down or think about, articulate what it is that you want to do in order to get started. So what is it that you want to make go away, or what is it that you want to start doing, or what do you want to be able to achieve? So you need to know what your goal is. So what is it that you like to do, and write that down, and then develop a plan. So Chris has already talked about how you can develop a plan with some of your healthcare providers. You can do it with some self-help tools like that lifestyle guide. But also, if you're finding that you have to give things up, like Chris gave such a good example of finding substitute activities, you need to ask yourself what it is that you like about the activity that you're feeling sad about giving up or doing less of. So I've worked with people who would give different suggestions, like a woman who really loved kayaking, and it was really hard on her wrists, and she couldn't keep up with her family when she was kayaking, and someone suggested to her a double kayak with her partner, and she didn't like that at all. She felt like she was sitting on the sidelines and she was being paddled by someone else. And so I said, like, what is it that you like about it? So it was being out in nature. It was being with the family. It was, so I said, okay, so like, it's not kayaking per se. We don't have to get into the kayak or handle the paddle. We need to find substitute activities that get you out in nature and give that your family also enjoys, because you want to spend time with them. So you need to identify the features of what it is. Like, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you're grappling with? And then what are the features or characteristics of that you want to find? You want to find the substitutes for.
Chris, as you were listening to Catherine describe that process of finding out about what particular things, what you value in an activity. And you mentioned that you transitioned from mountain biking to road biking. Does that reflect that you were thinking about what you really liked was being on the bike and being outside, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's kind of experimenting. I found that I don't need to be on a rough trail really to enjoy the biking. I could be on the road, and I can have a different bike and still enjoy that. And same with being outdoors. Actually, really, rowing was very hard for me for the back for quite a while, and just being out on the lake or out in nature, especially with the kids, it was really the core of the enjoyment, and there was other ways to still enjoy that. So, and the same thing goes with food too, like cutting out foods that didn't agree with me. There's lots of other healthy choices that fit my lifestyle that I enjoy still too. So
thank you. I noticed that another general theme in the questions here is, okay, well, here we talked about the things that we can do ourselves and together with the help from our healthcare professionals. But several people have mentioned in the Q&A box, what about others? What is the advice about how to help those around you in understanding your disease, how this impacts your life, how you can participate or not participate, or participate differently in activities? Chris, did you find that was something that you needed to do with family and friends to improve your self-care, help their understanding of what you were capable of?
I think that journaling was important to me. Like, journaling was important in getting a handle of what was going on with my body and with my condition. But I also like to share that. I ended up sharing it quite a bit, and it felt good to be able to help others maybe in the same situation. Yeah, like work was more of a challenge, I'd say, because I'd have, this is before COVID, and I'd have customers come in and we'd go for a handshake, and I'd have to go a little further in and go for the wrist shake, right? And some people would look at me funny, and I kind of have to explain myself, and sometimes you get responses like, oh, you have arthritis. So don't we all? We're all getting old, aren't we? And so you have to kind of take it not too seriously, I guess, and try and explain, but not feel like you're obligated to really justify everything, right? So it was more of a challenge at work, I found, but my coworkers were very supportive. My boss was very supportive. He invested in a stand-up desk for me, and I had the yoga ball at work as well, and so that was very helpful. But yeah.
Thank you. Catherine, what would you like to add to that? Helping others to understand, and several people have said that it's challenging, that they might feel guilt at not being able to participate in activities with their friends, etc.
Yeah. So it is a process, and we all feel guilty at different times. But I'll give you another quote from a research participant. Gradually, I learned that I'm not in impression management anymore. I'm not going to worry about other people's impressions, was what she was talking about, that she was going to worry about her own self-care and not worry about outside impressions or outside expectations. But it really depends on who the others are, and some people who you're close with and you're going to spend a lot of time with, you're going to disclose more information to them, and you're going to feel more comfortable about disclosing that information. But you might feel more guilty too, because you're going to feel like, well, they don't have arthritis, so why should my arthritis be imposing on them? And if it wasn't arthritis, it'd be something else. So there's give and take in all relationships, and you need to have a certain amount of communication about what you can and cannot do, or what you do and do not like, and that's just part of life. So you need to, it's a process of letting go of this guilt that somehow it's that me imposing on them, or it's unfair. I've done a lot of work with mothers, and they said telling their kids to pick up themselves because they can't do it because of their arthritis is so unfair to the kids. The kids didn't want it. And that's your job as a mom. With or without arthritis, you need to tell the kids to pick up after themselves. So I'm not surprised that Chris would find journaling really helpful. So whether you actually write things out and do journal, or you just have these internal conversations with yourself, you come to realize that it's not the arthritis. And if arthritis wasn't there, there'd be something else that you'd be grappling with about how much information to share. And then with more casual acquaintances, you're obviously not going to share a lot of information. You can, you can just, you can learn to, like the comment about don't we all have arthritis, and you can learn what your standard response to that sort of thing is going to be. It is a very serious disease. We wish people knew it was a serious disease, but we're not going to change everybody and educate everybody in all of these casual situations. But places where you spend a lot of time, like the workplace or some volunteer or some activity places, then there you want to decide how much give and take you're going to have to support you and the people that are important to you. People want to help.
Wise words, Catherine, and wise words, Chris. You know, there's so many questions that we couldn't get to, specific questions about particular foods that are pro-inflammatory versus anti-inflammatory. There were questions about Tylenol and aspirin and other medications, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Catherine, really doesn't we can't address in this webinar in this way. We will try and answer the questions that we can on the webpage and post them after this session. But I want to take the time, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I could have continued this conversation for 2 hours rather than 1 hour, because there's a lot of learning that I'm enjoying here. However, I really want to thank both Catherine and Chris. We're really grateful to learn about your research and your colleagues' research, Catherine. And Chris, I think we just got a small taste of what you could teach us. And I know that there's much more in the video, so I encourage people to watch the video. I want to thank all of the audience for joining us today. Don't forget to stay on and view the video, which will be right after this episode. I also want to take just a second to thank and to extend huge kudos to the team behind the scenes who are responsible for putting together the videos and coordinating this webinar session, etc. And to thank our sponsors for their support: AbbVie, Biocon Biologics, Fresenius Kabi Canada, and Janssen. And if you would like to, we also have a survey at the end. Take a few minutes to complete it. Those who complete the survey by December the 7th will be entered into a draw to win a $25 Starbucks card. And finally, in the spirit of the session, please, everyone, take good self-care of yourselves.
It's a strange thing to go from, hiking and doing 10K runs to walking down the sidewalk, and the driveway has a bit of a slope to the sidewalk, worrying about that angle, because that angle created enough pressure on my ankle that it was painful. That's when it was really a problem. My name is Chris Pudlak. I was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis in 2016. And I received my diagnosis, and I was basically given the understanding that this is something for life, and I'm likely facing pain for long term and medications for long term. And so to think, that I have to deal with this pain for life, or lack of mobility for life, that was really hard. Probably the mental aspect, right, was the psychological aspect was more difficult.
It could be a real shock or a blow to realize that you have to make adjustments over the totality of your life, that it's not something that you can make go away, but it is something that you can learn to live with and figure out how to live a good life once you learn a little bit more about the how arthritis is affecting you personally. The term self-care actually has a lot of meanings depending on the person who's using it. So for some people, it means everything they do to take care of themselves and live a healthy lifestyle. And for others, it means some very specific activities. So as an occupational therapist, I can tell you that we learned the term self-care to refer to the tasks of everyday living that people do, but more recently people use self-care to talk about taking care of their physical and emotional and psychological health.
It was intimidating managing a new diagnosis like ankylosing spondylitis and having a family and having a career and wanting to be active and trying to balance all that. But really my family was number one as a motivator. I wanted to stay active. I wanted to be strong as a father for them and be able to go to work and provide for my family in that way. With the joint pain that I was experiencing, I had to change some of my activities. Change my focus on exercise to do what I enjoy and what feels good. Like I used to do a lot of running, but running was very problematic, especially when my knee and my feet were swollen. And I started swimming. So I was never really a swimmer. And now I'm doing up to 2.5 kilometers swimming, lake swimming. I've really progressed, and it's a great low impact exercise. I put myself on an elimination diet, cut out a lot of foods until I would feel a lot better. Or once I got to that point with my rheumatologist's permission, I would start to cut back on medication. So I would be taking 6 pills of naproxen per day. I'd try and cut it down to 5 to 4 and see if I could sustain that, or if I needed to change my diet or increase my medications again.
A healthy diet does make a difference. It helps you sleep better. It helps you move better. And so it generally helps you feel better or have a better response to some of the ups and downs of daily life, including arthritis symptoms. But also don't beat yourself up. Not everybody can follow these really strict elimination diets. You do the best you can with what you got.
Started with the foot bath in the evenings just to cool my feet down, basically. They were swollen, they were red and physically hot. So for me, the ice was the best. And once the swelling comes down, it gives me more mobility, then I can stretch and then I can move around, and which helps as well, right? It's like a synergistic effect, right?
We would all like a world that had no arthritis in it, or can be a chronic and lifelong condition that does have an impact on people's day-to-day lives. So while research on finding a cure or finding the best medication is really important, in the meantime, there are thousands of people who are living with the effects of arthritis. So researchers at Arthritis Research Canada kind of cover that full gamut of health services research, but also practical research that helps people get on with their day-to-day lives. And what types of self-management or self-care strategies really work, what types of physical activity, what types of modifications or adaptations in the workplace or in the home enable people to live a productive and satisfying life.
If you were just diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, what I would probably say to you is what I kept telling myself: fall down 9 times, get up 9 times, and find out what works for you. And when I was trying different diets, so different for different people. So it's important to find what works for you and listen to your body, and definitely don't give up. So there's more care definitely that's involved in my life now. But in a way, there's a lot of good things that have come from my diagnosis. Like I've made so many positive lifestyle changes. I've learned so much about this condition. And I think by sharing, I've been able to help others with it too.